Amitabha, bitches. Welcome to the Movie Mass. I am your brother, the movie monk, and sometimes Shaolin monk, Jay. Also the Abbot of Arrow, baby, the Shaolin Abbot of Arrow. Bishop of Bull Moose, choir boy of Criterion. Hey, I'm here. And today I am quite obviously dressed in a silly manner. I actually can't believe this thing still fits me. These are my Buddhist robes. I probably haven't put this on in a decade, but hey, I didn't get as fat as I thought I did. What do you know? That feels good. I mean, it didn't feel right popping a beer if I'm going to be here in my Buddhist robes, because today is the day that I want to record my in memoriam. Been working on notes for this for a while, actually, assholes. It is a little late in January, but I got kids. What do you want from me? I want to take a moment to look back upon the mostly filmmakers, but I'm going to throw a few musicians in there as well who passed on. Filmmakers who have entered the cycle of rebirth yet again. And of course, there are big ones. There's ones that we'll always remember. Huge, huge stars that passed away. We'll never forget. But then there are also some lesser known folks. There are some people that may have been involved in some movies that we really love, but don't always get the recognition of somebody who's in front of the camera, of somebody of the prestige of Robert Redford or Diane Keaton, let's say. So I also want to spend a little time talking about some of those folks who passed on, who maybe were overshadowed a little bit. I mean, unfortunately, people are passing away all the time. And, you know, if you died right before Hulk Hogan did, you might have been a little overshadowed. So I'm going to go through it mostly chronologically and talk about, recognize the people who have died. And if me dressing like a Buddhist monk with my robes, that I actually got these when I was in China at the Shaolin Temple, didn't give it away. This is not going to be a completely serious video. I'm sorry. So first in January, actually very early in 2025, we lost Janot Swark. This is where I pretend to be worldly. I know how to speak Polish or whatever the shit Swark is. It's some kind of Eastern European. S-Z-W-A-R-C, Swark. He is the director of Somewhere in Time. He directed Somewhere in Time. He was 87 when he passed away in January, so he lived a nice long life. But Kino is going to be giving us, hypothetically, they're going to be giving us a 4K of Somewhere in Time. You never know with Kino. I mean, like, it might be on the shelf for like a day and a half before they recall the things. So I guess you just got to buy Kinos on day one. That was their strategy with Daylight last year, pulling that about a day after it had been on shelves. I think that was the strategy, is just to get everybody day one to order this thing or to go into Barnes & Noble or Bull Moose and buy this thing. Anyway, we also lost David Lynch in January. So, you know, that was kind of the big one for January. David Lynch, I believe, as a director, obviously far more discussed than Janot Swark. There's a ton of stuff that David Lynch did. I don't need to rattle them all off. David Lynch was 78, and, you know, you pass away just before David Lynch, and people tend to focus on David Lynch. We lost a couple of, we lost a big one in February. We also lost a medium one in February, and then there's a lesser-known author who passed in February. Now, the big one, of course, in February, you're probably already yelling it at your TV right now. Gene Hackman passed away in February. He was 95. I mean, that's a ripe old age. You know, you can't expect to live forever. Anytime I do these in memoriam episodes, you know, you always say, it's too bad he passed away. He was 95, he was 97, she was 103. Yeah, it's too bad. You never want someone to die. But I mean, if you're going to go at 95, that beats the shit out of going at 25. Now, what was weird about Gene Hackman's death is that his wife also was found dead. Apparently, it was kind of a weird thing. It was some kind of weird thing because his wife died of some viral infection. I mean, she got wicked sick, and she died. She was much younger than him. She was, I don't know, 60s or 70 or something. She was a couple decades younger than him. But she gets sick, I don't know, it wasn't coronavirus, but she had something, she dies, he's 95. He's not taking care of himself. I don't know how lucid and clear he was, but that was really unfortunate because, you know, she dies and then he doesn't even have the wherewithal to, like, call somebody and get her taken out of there. He dies like a week later. He lives with her corpse for like 5 days a week, it's really kind of a sad thing for someone as legendary as Gene Hackman is. Now, we also lost Michelle Trachtenberg in February. She was only 39. She's our medium. You know, everybody's heard of her. Everybody's seen stuff that she's in. She was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She was in Princess Diaries. Most importantly, more important than those, she was in Eurotrip. Now, her cause of death was listed as diabetes complications, but I'm kind of calling bullshit on that one. She had received a liver transplant about a year earlier, and as much medical attention as she probably received for that operation, both before and after that operation. I mean, diabetes would certainly have been diagnosed. I don't believe she had undiagnosed diabetes at that point, not after undergoing a transplant. Furthermore, uncontrolled diabetes does take some time to kill you. It's not the type of thing that kills you over the course of a week or even months. It does take usually several years for uncontrolled diabetes. For instance, prior to the invention of insulin, a type 1 diabetic had severely uncontrolled diabetes, and even they lasted for about 3 years. It took about 3 years for a type 1 diabetic to die without any kind of insulin therapy. So I'm not sure I'm buying the diabetes complications. Her family declined for religious reasons, which I respect, but they declined in autopsies. So I think the best we're going to get for Michelle Trachtenberg, passing away at 39, that's well under my litmus, my line. She was well under it. I mean, 39, it's not like she was a kid, but hey. Now also, one you might not have heard a lot about, Tom Robbins passed away in February as well. He was 92, so he was getting close to Gene Hackman's age. He was of that kind of generation, pretty old for a boomer, I guess. Pretty old boomer, maybe part of that silent generation just after the World War II folks, the Greatest Generation folks. But the reason Tom Robbins is important is because he wrote Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, the novel that Gus Van Sant based his film off of, the film starring Uma Thurman, directed by Gus Van Sant. So he wrote the novel that obviously spawned that. He also wrote one of my favorite novels ever that has not been adapted into a film, but it's called Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates. So there's a book recommendation for your asses for this month. Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates. Read it in Tom Robbins' honor, since he passed away almost a year ago. Now in March we lost a couple. We lost Wings Hauser in March, 77 years old when he passed away. Of course, he's kind of the guy around these parts, at least. If you're a Vinegar Syndrome fan, you probably have at least a couple of his movies. I think he's pretty well renowned for Tough Guys Don't Dance. He plays an absolutely unhinged lunatic, really, just barely holding his sanity together in that film. And it's really a wonderful kind of scene-chewing addition to that film. And recently, in fact, about the same time that he died, Vinegar Syndrome put out The Carpenter, which is a Wings Hauser starring film. He plays the main bad guy who's a ghost that's like psychically linked to a particular house, so he feels it when the house gets damaged. So if you burn the house down, then the ghost burns up. It's really wild shit. And I gotta say, The Carpenter's a great film if you haven't seen it, so check that one out in Wings Hauser's honor. Also, I'm gonna mention George Foreman. I mean, he was more of an athlete, I guess, but still an entertainer. And Lord knows, we've all grilled a panini on one of them grills, man. He gave us the grill. He was only he was 76. He was 76, that's old enough. My line is about 70 to 75. Anything over 75, and it's like, okay, you can't really complain about how much time you got on this earth. Before 70, it's like, yeah, that's a little young in today's day and age. Even though 68 is not young, 65 is not young, it's still kind of young to pass away in our modern age with our modern medicines and shit like that. In April, we lost a huge one in April. Big one. Val Kilmer passed away in April at 65 years old. Again, that's kind of below my line there, right? He was a little bit young at 65 to be going. 65 is, obviously, it's not young. It's not a short amount of time. If you did 65 years in prison, it would feel awfully long. But at the same time, you kind of expect a little bit longer than 65, or you at least wish for a little bit more time than 65 years. He, of course, had a lot of health problems the last several years of his life with some cancers that required a laryngectomy, maybe a total laryngectomy. I'm not sure he was speaking, or at least speaking on his own, the last couple of years there. So really too bad, but maybe not shocking because we all knew he was kind of sick. It's unfortunate, but maybe not one that really like blew your socks off like some of the other deaths that occurred in 2025. We also lost Lar Park Lincoln. She passed away in April as well, 63 years old. So she died of breast cancer. This was our great value, our Walmart brand Carrie from Friday the 13th, Part 7. So she was the psychic girl who fought with Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th, Part 7. One of the weaker entries, in my opinion. I know there are some folks out there that like Friday the 13th, Part 7. Not me. I'm not a big fan of that one. I tend to stop right around Part 6. I think Part 6 is fine. End it there. I don't really come back for any Friday the 13th after that. Not very often. I'll revisit them sometimes, but certainly not annually. Now, Lar Park Lincoln was the blonde chick who fought Jason in that movie using her psychic powers, and her dad wound up coming up from the lake and saving her ass. R.I.P. Lar Park Lincoln. Ruth Buzzy died at 88 years old in May. I'm kind of surprised she was still alive. They made references to her in A Wet Hot American Summer twice. That's the reason I'm mentioning her now.
I am not Ruth Buzzy standing here.
Ruth Buzzy better watch her back.
Otherwise, I'm not sure I would know who Ruth Buzzy was if not for Wet Hot American Summer. That was a joke that went kind of over my head when I first saw Wet Hot American Summer. James Foley died in May also, age 71. He's like just barely over my line. He directed the recent Vinegar Syndrome release of At Close Range. He directed the Madonna film, Who's That Girl? That was recently released, I think, by Shout Select. He directed Glengarry Glen Ross. He directed The Corruptor with Chow Yun-fat. I talked about that one back in November briefly. That's one that I saw in the theaters, in fact. Might be the first James Foley film I ever saw in the theaters. But again, James Foley, not a huge name. You know him if you like his movies, probably, but not as well known as some of the other directors that passed away in 25. So I think it's important to mention him, his work. Go buy At Close Range from Vinegar Syndrome in honor of James Foley. That particular limited edition is now below 2,000 copies left. So, you know, you might have another month or two to get your hands on that bad boy. So think about it. You can honor the great James Foley. Pour out some of that 40. Robert Benton died in May at 92 years old. He won an Oscar for Best Director for directing Kramer versus Kramer. George Wendt died in May at 76 years old. He's the dude from Cheers. You know the guy from Cheers. He's the guy from Cheers. I thought he was 76 years old, like back in 1993. That's how weird it is when you're like young. I'm little and I'm watching Cheers at like 10 years old, 12 years old, and Homeboy looks old. I'm older now than he was when he was on Cheers, and Homeboy looked old. Shit. This one's big for me. I mean, no one really talked about this one, so I didn't find out about this particular death until I started doing research for this episode, actually. But Peter Kwong passed away at 73 years old in May. He was Rain from Big Trouble in Little China. Rain passed away at 73 years old, which is kind of wild because an Asian guy dying at 73 is like when a white guy dies at 40 or a black guy dying at 17. It's just wild. You expect them to go a lot longer than 73. You expect to get a lot of mileage out of Toyota is all I'm saying. Brian Wilson is the big one from June. He died at 82 in June. He was one of the founders of the Beach Boys. Obviously, that's kind of a big deal, but he was a major influence on pop music of the latter half of the 20th century. So even if you're not like a big Beach Boys person, which I'm not, you still have to acknowledge the influence that I believe that he had over all of the pop music in the decades to follow the Beach Boys. So chances are good that even if you don't love the Beach Boys, you probably do love something that came after that was in some way, shape, or form influenced by the music that Brian Wilson produced. John Cusack played a fictionalized version of Brian Wilson in the film Love and Mercy back in 2014. I don't know if you guys have seen Love and Mercy, but low-key, that's actually a pretty solid flick. And it's like, I think it's like the last decent movie John Cusack made. You know, John Cusack had a great couple of years in the 80s. I think he had a pretty great couple of years in the 90s. I think maybe he's had a few in the 2000s, 1408, a few other bigger ones, but I think definitely over the last 10 to 15 years, things have been a little bit sparse, a little bit lean for John Cusack. But Love and Mercy, he played Brian Wilson, and it's actually a really great film. So Brian Wilson still relevant to film, even in more recent decades. And R.I.P. Brian Wilson, that was the big one for June. Michael Madsen died in July at age 67. Again, not a spring chicken, but a little bit on the younger side of my like 70 line in the sand. You might have expected him to go a little bit longer, but I understand he was a relatively hard-living kind of dude. So maybe not a surprise that he shaved a few years off the back end there. Just with all the drinking and the smoking and the fucking and the fighting and shit like that, which is all awesome stuff as far as I'm concerned. And then we lost a couple of really big ones. I mean, guys that Michael Madsen was already a big enough passing, right? He's very well known for his work with Quentin Tarantino and other films like Donnie Brasco. Michael Madsen was definitely hot shit. He did some really legendary stuff through the 90s and even into the early to mid aughts. But the guys that died after Michael Madsen just completely like wiped him off the board. Ozzy the fuck Osbourne died in July at age 76. He was just barely over that line, but honestly, if there's any dude that did some hard living, it was Ozzy Osbourne. Quite frankly, surprised he made it to 76. I think the rest of the world can agree with me. Obviously, Ozzy Osbourne's responsible for a lot of music that was very influential, gets a lot of play in films and stuff like that. But then, you know, he had roles, maybe not big ones, probably for the best. I don't think he would have made a great actor, but obviously, you know, he had a very memorable role, kind of a glorified cameo in the film Trick or Treat from 1986, which Synapse put out like a year ago or so. And so that was a pretty memorable Ozzy Osbourne role on film, obviously more well known for his music and maybe to younger kids for his reality television program that went on for many, many years, became very infamous for that, like yelling at Sharon and stuff like that. It's wild. Hulk Hogan then proceeded to pass away in July at age 71 as well. Another guy who probably lived a pretty tough life. I don't think there's anything particularly easy about being a professional wrestler for so many years, particularly after a certain age. I mean, I think the injuries really mount up, and I think because of the injuries and the lifestyle, there does tend to be some substance abuse that goes along with that, especially you start getting to like opioid painkillers. We're not talking about like partying. You're Ozzy, you do a little partying, you know, like, toot a little blow, you smoke some weed, you know, maybe there's a little heroin in the weed, you know, you use a lot of alcohol, awful lot of alcohol. Alcohol's terrible for you, but you know, Hulk Hogan and pro wrestlers, they start getting into like opioid painkillers, narcotics and stuff because the back injuries and shit like that. And that's when shit can get really, really bad. That stuff will kill you very quickly. So, you know, 71, he did make it just over the line there. Also, there tends to be some anabolic steroid abuse in that particular branch of athletics. It's not like they're drug testing people in professional wrestling. And, you know, you're an entertainer. It's for show. Having muscles helps out in that particular line of work. And one thing I will say is that using supraphysiological dosages of anabolic steroids for a long period of time, it is definitely going to have an impact on the heart, on ventricular hypertrophy, on ejection fraction, and that is going to lead to a greater incidence of cardiac arrest when you're a little bit older. Now, you don't even have to be terribly old. I mean, a lot of bodybuilders pass away at 50, 55. Cardiac arrest, heart failure, very, very common, and I believe that is what what took Hulk Hogan from us. I wish he'd gone a little bit longer personally, but got to honor Hulk Hogan. He's also been in a bunch of films as well. Maybe he didn't have quite as successful of a film career as he did wrestling and reality TV, but all that shit's pretty much blurred these days anyway. But definitely, you can find some movies that he's in if you want to no holds barred. There you go. Go grab that one and watch that one in Hulk Hogan's honor. I'm sorry to report that this guy, the guy that's on fire right there on the album cover of Wish You Were Here, that dude died in August. Remarkably at 88, I mean, for a guy who's so thoroughly covered in flames, he really did last a lot longer than this album would lead you to believe. I think they actually set him on fire. I think that is those are practical flames for the photography of, and I'm not a huge Pink Floyd guy. This is the only Pink Floyd album that I have, but I do like Wish You Were Here. I think that's some of their better work. Some of their later work, but some of their better work, in my humble opinion. But that guy died in August at 88. Terrence Stamp, the OG General Zod, died in August at age 87. Again, if you're dying in the late 80s, you've done pretty good. You went a pretty long time. Hopefully, you have a lot of kids and grandkids and people around you when you pass. But Terrence Stamp, the OG General Zod. Jerry Adler also died. Hesh from Sopranos passed away. It's really terrible what time is doing to the cast members of that show. And so many of the greats from The Sopranos have left us now. And let's just pray. Let's just offer up some incense and let's say a prayer that we'll get a 4K of The Sopranos in 2026. That's one thing that I'm really, really hoping for, is a 4K of The Sopranos. My wife turned to me just the other evening as we were sitting together upstairs enjoying a little tea and a little light conversation before turning in for bed. And she said, you know what? I'd really like to rewatch The Sopranos sometime. We need to rewatch that. It's been a while and it's such a great show. And I said, yeah, you're right, but I'm holding out for the 4K. I've got all the DVDs behind me. I didn't upgrade to Blu-ray. I'm holding out for the 4K. The minute that 4K drops, that's day one. Definitely got to get that. And we're going to pour one out for Hesh.
Come on, get the fuck out of here and stop wasting my time.
Robert Redford was the big one in September. Might have been one of the top 3 biggest passings of 25. I mean, he was a legend, new Hollywood legend, really made some humongous films in the 70s, but continued to work throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s. I mean, even today, he was prolific as both an actor in films like Jeremiah Johnson and The Sting and Sneakers and what's that fucking spy movie he made with Brad Pitt? But then he was also prolific as a director of films too. Probably doesn't get quite as much credit for his directorial efforts, but there's a number of films you could watch in honor of Robert Redford. I will tell you, when he passed away, I blew the dust off my copy of The Sting. And my wife and I watched the 4K of The Sting in honor of Robert Redford when he passed. That was unfortunate. And me and my dad were actually watching, I was over at my dad's and Jeremiah Johnson was on, and we sat there and watched Jeremiah Johnson for a while. We didn't catch the whole thing, but we watched the back half of Jeremiah Johnson. And Robert Redford, I can say, was a remarkable, like a strikingly handsome fella. In addition to his talents, you can understand why he lasted as long as he did in front of the camera as well. Now, a lesser known one, of course, you dying in September, no one's talking about you, all right? Robert the fuck Redford just passed away. Please, wait till October to die. Give him like a month at least before you also pass away. Claudia Cardinal could not offer up that courtesy. She died at age 87, so she's pretty close in age to Robert Redford when she passed away in September. Now, Claudia Cardinal is a little bit lesser known, particularly these days. I think the films that she's especially famous for came out decades ago, possibly even before some of us were born. She was in 8½by Federico Fellini. She was in Once Upon a Time in the West, directed by Sergio Leone. She was in The Pink Panther with Peter Sellers. So those are all, I think, 60s and 70s. She was bigger in those decades, I think, during that kind of French New Wave era. Of course, she's working with Italian directors, with American directors. I think, international thing going on. Diane Keaton died in October. This was another this one felt like out of the blue. It just felt like she was 79 when she passed away in October, but I don't know, she just seemed like more like radiant and healthy. Whenever you saw images of her, even in her late 70s, she had like a glow to her that, seemed to express. Obviously that doesn't mean anything, right? Like not everybody's gonna show up for like a year with like bags under their eyes and like an IV drip, wheeling themselves around in a wheelchair, but like, Stephen Hawking, man, he looked sick as fuck for his whole life. He died at 76. He almost went as long as Diane Keaton. You expected Diane Keaton to beat Stephen Hawking by a few more years than that, because dude looks sick as shit. Now, Diane Keaton kind of overshadowed a little bit. Another passing in October, Drew Struzan passed away at age 78, so he was, damn near Diane Keaton's same age. He had been battling illness for a while, though. For some years, Drew Struzan had been ill. So he wasn't as big a surprise as Diane Keaton was. But I consider Drew Struzan very much responsible for an important movie poster aesthetic of the 1980s. Here's some of his work. He did the movie posters for a ton of stuff you've seen a million times. I mean, Star Wars is huge. He did one of my favorites, Better Off Dead. But he's done a ton of work throughout the 80s chiefly, but he worked throughout the 90s and 2000s as well, doing illustrations, predominantly for movie posters. Prior to movie posters, he did some illustrations for album covers. I think he did an Alice Cooper album cover. At any rate, Drew Struzan, R.I.P., he wasn't doing a lot of work in recent years due to his illnesses, but really we owe him. We owe him for that 80s movie poster aesthetic that so many of us love. R.I.P. Drew Struzan. Also in October, this lady from The Brood passed away. Samantha Eggar is her name. She was aged 86 when she passed away in October. And then another big one in October, semi-big one. This one is like moderately big. Ace Frehley died at 74 in October. He was with Kiss from pretty much the start till 1982. He contributed a lot to their albums, and then he rejoined Kiss for some tours in the 90s, which is when I saw Kiss in the later 90s, and then for a 1998 album that they produced, he rejoined Kiss. But he did pass away. Also, this guy died in September. This is actually from Commando. This is not his actual death. He was still alive in this photo. The dude had such an Italian name. His name was Michael Delano. Such an Italian name. He sounds like a brand of salami, right? Delalo. He should be like a gabagool. This guy is a Delalo. Michael Delano. He passed away. He was 84 years old, which in Italian years is like 117. You got to do the conversion to Italian years. It's like 117. This lady from Scrooged. I feel like I need to pronounce that more carefully. When you see it in writing, it's Scrooged, but like, you get to talking fast and it's like Scrooge. Which Scrooge are you talking about? Scrooged. The Bill Murray Scrooged film. That lady died at 100 years old when she passed away. I mean, shit. She already looks 90 there. I can't believe she was like 60 in that image. It's wild. People, you look old back then. I'm just saying. Her name was Maria Riva, and her mom was Marlene the Fuck Dietrich. Can you believe that? That was the daughter of Marlene Dietrich, the golden era of Hollywood actress from Germany. And in another loss to Christmas movie side characters, Clark Griswold's mama died as well. Diane Ladd died in November. She was aged 89. She was only about 8 years older than Chevy Chase, who played her son in Christmas Vacation, of course. She was in Christmas Vacation playing the grandma, Clark's mom. She was also in a couple of little films that you probably would not recognize. You've never heard of these, I'm sure. Chinatown, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. So she's done a ton of work that you would be familiar with. Another guy who died in November is the guy who directed the worst James Bond movie of all time, and that is Die Another Day, directed by Lee Tamahori, who died at 75. I think he lost a few years for directing Die Another Day. There was a little karma involved. I'm no expert. Despite wearing my Buddhist robes, I'm no karma expert, but I'm pretty sure he might have shaved a few years off by directing Die Another Day. That movie was a piece of shit. It's the only James Bond movie that I just don't ever revisit. I think I saw Die Another Day in the theaters. I mean, I know I saw it in the theaters, but I'm not sure I've seen it since then. It was such a piece of shit. Anyway, R.I.P. Lee Tamahori. I'm also very, very sad to report that Tatsuya Nakadai has passed away as well. He died in November of 2025. This motherfucker, Tatsuya Nakadai, was in every damn Criterion release. Every Criterion release. Criterion's on spine number, like, I don't know, 1,500 right now, and Tatsuya Nakadai has been in 2,000 of the 1,500 movies that Criterion has released. I'm telling you what, he was in Samurai Rebellion, he was in Harakiri, he was in Seven Samurai, he was in the Human Condition trilogy, he was in When a Woman Ascends the Stairs, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, he was in High and Low, Quaidain, Sword of Doom, forget about it, The Face of Another, Kill, Kagemusha, Ran, and the non-Criterion Goyokin, which I recently discussed. Criterion, I know you want Goyokin. I know you want it. Now, this image you're seeing now has been my desktop background since about 2006. So I have looked at this image of Tatsuya Nakadai walking away from a bunch of corpses he's responsible for every day for the past 20 years. I have gazed at this image. And I don't plan on changing it. I'm never going to change it. In 50 years, this will still be my desktop background on whatever device I'm using at that time. This is easily one of the most badass images in all of cinema. So R.I.P. Tatsuya Nakadai. Pick one of those movies. I watched Goyokin just last night in his honor. I watched it on DVD too. It feels wrong doing that in my Buddhist robes. I watched it on DVD too. It was a terrible experience. I need a 4K of that. Come on, Criterion, I know you wanna. Anyway, these two German twins went out on the same day at age 89, and what I asked myself initially is like, well, okay, how did two old ladies die on the same day? I mean, that seems unlikely. They're twins that die on the same day? Of course, they had medically assisted suicide, which is always cool in nations with socialized medicine for some weird reason, right? Why would Germany let people kill themselves? Oh yeah, because they got to pay for your health insurance. So the sooner you take yourself out, the more they save. And that is why socialized medicine is a wonderful thing, you guys. It is kind of cool that they went out on the same day together, though, I gotta admit. You know, if me and my wife make it really, really old, I don't know, I might be down to die on the same day as her, because I don't want to live without her. As gay as that sounds, I don't want to live without my wife. Udo Kier died in November at age 81.
The blood of these whores is killing me.
Finally got him. The blood of these whores finally got him. Anytime I'm not feeling good, somebody's like, hey, are you sick? Immediately, the thing that you need to respond with is, the blood of these whores is killing me. And do a weird fake accent, too. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa also passed away at 75 in December. Shang Tsung and them from Mortal Kombat. Bro had a grandchild named River, and that's about as non-Shang Tsung as you could possibly get. I thought she was hard, dog. How you gonna have a kid named River? Now, this might have been the big one for the year. I might put this one over even Robert Redford. Robert Redford was a big one. Diane Keaton was a big one. Ozzy Osbourne was huge, but Robert Reiner was killed in December along with his wife, stabbed to death by their son, which is why, I mean, it comes out of nowhere. It's not like he was sick. He was a little older when he passed. He's 76, 78. He was 78. So, you know, you hear about a 78-year-old dying and you think natural causes. Then you think, oh, his wife died too. All right, that's weird. Oh, they were both stabbed to death. Oh, that's terrible. They were stabbed to death by their son. It's just like a lasagna of tragedy, like layer upon layer built up of like, yeah, it's bad when somebody dies, no good. But then like, he's killed, he's murdered, and he's killed by his own son. It's awful. But I gotta say, Rob Reiner also had a fucking run of movies. You think about what a legendary, like, back-to-back banger after banger after banger after banger. Nobody has runs like this. Not a filmmaker, not a musician, not a sports champions definitely don't have runs like this, but like a fucking dynasty. He starts out in 84 with This Is Spinal Tap. 85, he comes back with The Sure Thing. Then Stand By Me in 86. Then The Princess Bride in 1987. That's a legendary film. When Harry Met Sally in 89. He didn't do anything in 88, so it's not like he fucked up in that year either. Misery in 1990. A Few Good Men in 1992. I mean, you think about the films that Rob Reiner is responsible for over the course of 8 short years. 8 years is nothing, especially when you're old like me. 8 years goes by fast, dog. And he churned out some really legendary films, eminently quotable, rewatched by generations. And it's not like he quit after A Few Good Men either. I mean, he made an incredible contribution to American film, especially of the 80s and 90s. He made very hopeful films, very funny films. They were feel-good movies. They're movies that you would walk away from, you'd laugh, you'd enjoy yourself, and you'd walk away from feeling good. And I think you have to appreciate that. I think something unique about Rob Reiner's films is that he made films that positively portrayed romance as like an institution, these romantic relationships as institutions that were like functional, desirable. They weren't like dysfunctional, everybody breaks up and hates each other, but they were something that like added to the human experience by having, you know, these functional romantic relationships. And so, you know, it was kind of an uplifting thing to watch his films, I think, especially in a day and age where misanthropy seems like so prevalent in movies. You know, everybody breaks up, everybody winds up hating each other. That sort of soap opera effect of everybody fucking everybody and breaking up and going their own separate ways. And it was just a fucked up way for him to go. I'm really pretty sad about that. And that one hung around, you know, more so than him dying of a heart attack at 78. You know, you'd feel bad and you would feel the loss, but not in the same way as finding out that he was murdered very violently, and that's just a terrible thing. So blessings be to Rob Reiner, and hopefully his rebirth is a beautiful one. And then one of the last ones we had for the year that was a pretty big one was Brigitte Bardot, died on December 28th at age 91. She was kind of there in that generation with Claudia Cardinal, and in fact, I think they did a film together. Now, Brigitte Bardot is a little bit lesser known in like popular US culture these days at least, but I think she was iconic in several French New Wave films. She was kind of an icon of the sexual revolution. She played a lot of characters that were sort of lascivious and she fucked a lot in her movies. At any rate, she sort of portrayed that in real life too. I mean, she had a lot of romantic relationships. I think she was married 4 times, and I think she cheated on several husbands. I mean, she, you know, I'm not talking shit. It's in her biography. But what I'm saying is that she was connected, I think, because of her on-screen and off-screen personas. She was connected to that era of feminism and of like freedom, of sexual freedom that era is often associated with. And so she became this kind of like icon of sexual revolution and feminism that actually she lived long enough to unfortunately see herself become the villain. She objected publicly to traditional Jewish and Muslim slaughter of animals. And she wrote a few letters. She was also critical of the French version of the #MeToo movement. So that's a grievous sin. You don't criticize #MeToo. You get your dick cut off for that type of thing. So I will say that France does not really offer free speech. That's not really a thing there in France in the way that we conceive of it here in the United States. And so she was charged and even convicted of retarded shit, like inciting hatred for, like, she wrote a couple of letters that got published. Like, she wrote like an open letter to like a newspaper or a magazine expressing her distaste for the slaughter of animals without anesthesia. And I think she actually used words like barbaric and savage. And I think those were sort of the terminology that that maybe the prosecutors objected to, that she was painting Islam out to be, you know, a savage thing and offending people, offending Muslims. And I'm not sure how much of that was really going on in France, but that was just, you know, 10 or so years ago, and she had to like pay fines and shit. And that is just unfortunate because it's just like her opinion, man. Free speech, dude. It's not even like she drew a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. At any rate, that was a maybe not super brief listing and commentary on the entertainers, the filmmakers who passed away in 2025. May they ever be remembered. I hope that they're reborn into existences that are fulfilling, and that their karma is good and uplifts their future existences. Or maybe they're hanging out with Jesus, and that would be cool too. I'm down with whatever. Anyway, I'm also down with these fools right here for being patrons. Boom. May Buddha bless these motherfuckers right here. I'm gonna go take this thing off right now because I feel very silly, and I wish you all a good afternoon. Amitabha to you fools. Peace, I'm out. The blood of these whores is killing me.